Hello there. Today's date is November 16th, 2020. The time is 3:04 p.m. I am Samuel Moran, and I am an undergraduate student at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. This is an oral history interview to be submitted to the COVID-19 Historical Archives. Um, Today is November 16th, and in the state of Wisconsin, we currently have 330,000 cases with 2,759 deaths. In the United States, we have 11.1 million cases and 246,000 deaths. Um, I am joined today by Professor Damir. Um, can you please provide some information about yourself, such as your name, age, where you live, current occupation, and some background information about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Damir Kovacevic. I am 30 years old. I'm a assistant professor of political science at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, specializing in international relations. I live in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Some things about me: I was born in Bosnia. I grew up mostly in the United States, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois. I've lived in. Um, Other than that, yeah, I don't know. I enjoy basketball, tennis. I like to cook. I like crosswords. And Sam approached me about this interview, and I thought it was a good idea. So I'm here to be part of the archival history.
All right. So I guess for the first real question is, what has most concerned you about the COVID-19 pandemic?
What has most concerned me? I I mean, simply put, I just the amount of people that have died in such a short period of time is concerning. Um, it was concerning when it was, when we were in the hundreds and thousands, as it should always be. And it's certainly concerning today because the numbers are staggering. And if this was a case of war or, something like when I study with international security, if we're talking about war and this many people had died in a period of, let's say, 9 months, it would be a international crisis as this is, but it would be one that we would want to end and we would want to stop. The difference, I think, is this is more, you can't see it. It's silent. People refer to it as the silent killer, whereas you can see, battle deaths or, massacres of individuals. So that's what's concerned me the most is just simply the amount of people that have died in a short period of time. Um, and it's something that we've obviously never experienced and no one's ever lived through. And I guess what concerns me the most is we're not at the end of it, and so the number will continue to rise. So that certainly is what I think concerns me the most.
Yeah. Um, what have been your feelings towards the pandemic so far as a whole?
Um, Feelings. Well, I'm. It's sad. It's frustrating. I get angry sometimes. At times I do get inconvenienced, but I try not to let that impact my life too much. Originally, I guess my feelings toward it were sort of uncertainty and a little bit of, yeah, I mean, mostly uncertainty that sort of maybe went into a little bit of fear. After a while, I guess you come into kind of the realm of acceptance, unfortunately, where you accept that this is life for a while and you try to do your best to kind of adjust and adapt to that life. And I've been trying to do that. And that means having to give up certain things, which for me is fine. I know that it's good for me and it's good for the greater whole. So I'm okay with those certain restrictions on my personal liberty. I know it's temporary. I know some people have a difficult time thinking about time horizons, but this has been a relatively short period of time. And if things are done correctly, this is not going to be the rest of our lives. And so I'd like to, I want to think 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years later. And if that means making some significant changes now, that's fine. So my feelings have been kind of all over the place, but at this point, it's just more of a acceptance of the reality, trying to do the best that I can as an individual to take care of myself and those around me. And I'm hopeful that we will get out of this eventually. Um, but yeah, I guess that kind of covers it.
Okay. So you are a professor, assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire. So how has COVID-19 impacted your profession um, as a teacher?
Yeah, a lot more online and remote learning. Um, that's the biggest one. I think my job, unlike some jobs, thankfully has not been impacted. I'm still able to do my job. I'm able to get paid. Um, I have not had to, think about other employment or anything like that, and so I have to remind myself of that when I feel inconvenienced. But yeah, from the perspective of a teacher, I mean, I work at a university that we have a lot of in-person classes. We pride ourselves on that. I would have classes in some instances with 60, 70, 80, 90 students, and this time it's very different. I've taught online before, but not much, and so it's just been kind of adjusting to that, reworking assignments, tests, exams, quizzes, any kind of papers, everything sort of moving online. It's been adjusting to sort of Zoom teaching and virtual office hours, which, you know, I've gotten used to. Um, it's not the same as if you were sitting in my office doing this interview, but I can see you. We can talk to each other. It's still, it's not. It's an okay alternative. So there's just been a lot of online teaching, and I think it's made me a better online teacher. But I think this time has also made us realize how we shouldn't take in-person classes for granted anymore, and the value of those. And I think I'm looking forward to having my students back and being able to actually come into a classroom and, you know, lecture to a regular group of students. So it's impacted me in that way, but generally I'm optimistic and I'm thankful that, I've been able to do my work, adjust it a little bit, but that's okay. I know it's not forever, and we just carry on. So um, like as we, you're in my class on Friday. Normally we probably have 30 kids in that class. On a Friday, 2 p.m., maybe like 5, 6 don't come that day because it's a Friday. But we had three, and that's the reality, and we just have to get used to that. But it's not forever.
So would you say that the changes at your workplace due to the pandemic have been like significant or damaging in any way?
Damaging. I wouldn't say damaging. I think in some ways they're significant because they're very different. So that is significant. I don't think of anything that is too damaging. To think about, I mean, we've only really been only doing this for 8, 9 months. Some people would say it seems like a long time, but some people's teaching careers are years and years and years, and so 8 to 9 months isn't that much. Mine is 6 years. So if I look back at the last 5 years, then this hasn't been that long. But it's significant because I can just think of several things. Like I normally like my office door open, and I encourage students to come in. The office door is constantly closed. It's like a ghost town on the fourth floor sometimes in Hibbard. I don't see my colleagues very much. Um, that's certainly significant, and I wish it wasn't the case. I don't have students coming in. I leave the office if I have to use the restroom or fill up my water bottle. Mostly it's just sitting here, and because this is where I can keep my mask off at least and work. Um, but So I mean, those things are obviously significant because we have a pretty cordial workspace. People are always here, and we're always talking to each other, and everyone is stopping by each other's offices. I always see students coming through here. We have a classroom on the fourth floor, and that's been very different. And of course, I already mentioned in the previous answer, the online learning has been different, but I don't think anything has been damaging. It's just been an adjustment that you need to get used to, and at times it's difficult and inconvenient, but something that we have to do and we can do.
Okay, so um, has online learning been difficult to adjust to? Like, has it been more difficult this semester and last semester compared to your past years of teaching?
A little bit, yes, because normally if you're teaching a class online, the expectation going into it is it's going to be online, and the students chose that class to be online. So there's already that expectation. Last year was this kind of quick, we shut down for several weeks. We moved everything online. It wasn't very organized. It was sort of just do the best you can. Let's get through the semester. Um, be lenient, be understanding. Let's just finish it. This going into the fall, I had a little bit of idea of what it would look like, but it was kind of, they told me it would be this hybrid section in August. So it took a little bit more adjusting and trying to figure out, okay, how do I make a hybrid section work? And so for me, it was just recording a lot of videos at home, which I thought would be really easy. But when you record like over 40 of them, you realize how much time you put into it. But again, it's manageable work that is in line with what I do, so it's fine. I think about it from the perspective of my students, though, and I mean, I think some students who are interested in the topic and who are good students will always do well, and they'll find a way to do well. But I've seen it impact other students who are maybe disinterested or not as, they're not motivated, or they find it harder to concentrate, or some students who have just been completely absent for several weeks. Or I've seen it with students that I've had in the past before that were solid students, maybe like, get good grades, do well in your classes, have kind of fallen off. And that's probably because there isn't that constant reminder in classrooms, and they don't see the professor as much. And it's easy to lose track of time because you're sitting at home, and more of it is on managing time. So that's kind of been the most unfortunate aspect of it, because I know with certain students, they would do probably better if this was in person. And part of you wants to say, okay, to that student, this is the reality, and you have to just accept it and, get your work in. We can complain only so much, and after that we need to just adapt. And it's you're facing a little bit of adversity, but that's okay, and you need to just do the work. But you also don't know what everyone's going through at this time. You don't know what people's personal lives are like, so you also want to, be understanding of that. So that's been kind of the biggest thing is and you feel more disconnected from your students. Like, I see you in class once a week, which is far more than I've seen some students. I don't even know what some of my students look like. I've never seen them. I just know what their picture is. But even seeing you once a week is not the same as if I were to see you 3 times a week. And that's significant. So that's been kind of the biggest thing, I think, from my perspective and from my students' perspective.
So you said that the pandemic has not affected your employment because you haven't been looking for other employment besides for moving online. But has the pandemic affected like any friends or family that you know of? Like, have they lost their jobs, or have they like endured any trouble with employment?
There are some people that I know who had to sort of pick up extra jobs, or whose hours shifted, or whose work significantly changed, and they didn't have that kind of clear, easy transition to online. Like, teaching online, I can teach my material whether it's like this or in person. It's not that significant of a change, but certain people's jobs that were never done online, having to kind of upend that. So most people in my family or close friends still have their jobs, but like, I think of my parents. My parents still go to work every day. They're you know they get tested now every day before going to work. They're far more likely to get exposed to it than, for instance, than I am, because they have to be in work in person. They can't do their job online. My sister is a dietitian in a hospital, so since they're so understaffed now, she's actually been more and more exposed to actual COVID patients. So her job is a lot riskier and more serious than she thought it would be, when under normal circumstances, a dietitian just visiting a patient's room for a little bit. Um, in some weird ways, it's worked out for some of my friends. I have a friend who just had a kid. He was born on right after the new year. So this was several months before this all began here. And his work was nice, and it was, they basically moved online and have said that they will remain online through the end of this year and probably all of next year. So he's been able to stay home with his son and work online completely, which is really cool. I mean, it's basically like an extended, paternity leave, and but with full employment. But I have some friends who sort of work in more like the restaurant industry and stuff, and that was a big significant thing, especially early on. So most people that are close to me, I know, still are doing their jobs, although it was a little different. And I'm good. That's good to to hear, and you're happy about that. But you hear other stories of other people, and that's where I have to sort of remind myself to just remain thankful and be happy that I'm still doing the job I want to do, even if it's a little different, and that's okay.
We're going to shift a little here, but have any of your coworkers or even yourself come in contact with COVID-19?
Can't speak for my coworkers. I don't think so. I imagine if my closest colleagues here in the department did, we would probably get some kind of email notification letting us know and asking us to quarantine. So we haven't. So I don't think so. I myself have not, from what I know. Um, I've started to. I've been getting tested here now that they have the rapid testing on campus, just as a precaution. So I've been doing that like once a week, just because I think I should. But generally speaking, no. Again, I can't be certain all the time. I still have to go to the grocery store, but I mentioned this maybe to you in class. I've been very cautious. I don't go to restaurants. You're not going to see me in a crowd of people. I have been at home a lot, and I. So for me, I've been taking it very seriously, and um, simply, I mean, I know some people say that you could get COVID and you might not have symptoms. It's still COVID. You still don't want to be sick. You still don't want to have that. So thankfully, nothing yet, um, and nothing for my coworkers that I've heard of.
So, what would you say was the biggest challenge that you personally faced during the pandemic when it came to being a professor? I think you touched on this with going online, but if you'd like to elaborate.
The biggest challenge, I would say, finding a way to reach my students through this weird void, and finding a way, and not really knowing how I'm reaching them, because normally I can see their faces in class and I can tell if someone's normally doing. I can tell if someone's upset. I can tell if someone's having a good day. I can tell if they're even understanding things. I can tell by head nods. I can tell if they're interested. And you build that bond over time with students. Some you get to know better than others, and but you feel closer to them, and you feel like, okay, I'm aware of where my students are, and I see them, and the students that attend, the students that miss, and this way I have no clue, especially with my intro level class where I have majors all over the place. So not being able to have a sense of where my students are at is disappointing. And you try to make yourself as available as possible, but the reality of it is you're not going to have students asking for virtual office hours all the time. I mean, they're doing their own thing. And so not being able to communicate or get to meet them uh, has been a huge challenge, because I think that's the part of my job that I enjoy the most. This is why I went into what I want to do. I enjoy my research and everything, but I like to be in the classroom in front of my students, and I've had very little of that. And so I would probably go with that.
So, we're going to shift now to your personal life. How has COVID-19 affected mostly you or your family?
Um, let's see. My current household, which is me and my partner, so it's just me and her and our dog. So, and we both work at the university, so we've been pretty fine. We sort of started taking this seriously in March. We both started working online from March to July. She started going back into work uh, a little bit on a kind of a low staffing basis, And then I didn't go back until obviously September. She normally works from home, goes in a couple times a week. I go in 3 times a week, mostly work from home. So that's been pretty consistent, pretty good. Um, like I said, family has been good. They've been tested. No one's been sick that we know of yet. My parents, my sister. I have one grandma that lives in the United States. She's been fine. She's been staying home and she's taken it seriously. My sister is supposed to have a wedding this semester. This semester, what am I talking about? This year. I can't get out of my professor speak. She was supposed to have a wedding, a bigger wedding, and that was upended, and so she's sort of waiting to do that still. And but I've heard of other people that's happened. So that's kind of been the big impact because she was planning to have one over the summer. Um, but yeah, otherwise we've been pretty fortunate. So like that's a good thing.
So, what has been the biggest challenges that you and your family have had to overcome due to the pandemic?
Not seeing each other, I think, or seeing each other very. I mean, I've seen my parents just several times. One time was just they uh, just kind of went by and then talked to them from a distance for a while, which they live 2 hours away. It wasn't isn't too hard to go, but that was weird and not being able to be around them. And I think I've seen my sister once since March. I mean, that's clearly it. I've seen my grandma kind of outside with a mask on a couple times. So that's the biggest challenge. I mean, everyone is healthy, which is a good thing, and you're thankful for that. And you keep reminding yourself that this is again still hasn't been that long. I mean, it's still one of those things that we can get through in a couple of years, and then you still have all those other years together. But it's hard, obviously, when Thanksgiving is rolling around, and and people want to be together. So that's been the biggest challenge, and I think a lot of people would probably agree with that.
Yeah, the holidays are coming up, so that's gonna be a little um, difficult for some people.
Mhm.
Um, so, in general, how would you say that the pandemic has affected the Eau Claire area?
Well, at first we were really fine. I mean, for a while it was, pretty unaffected here, and I think that changed once sort of restaurants were allowed to open up again, and there was the thing about the Supreme Court ruling, sort of overruling Governor Evers' stay-at-home order or limited capacity order. I'm not sure. There's been several of instances where they've back and forth, and where people started going out more, and then the cases started coming up, and then they've gone up quite a bit recently because the state of Wisconsin has been a hot spot, and and I think with the amount of, let's say, maybe students coming back into the area, that certainly jumps up. So, and I've heard that hospital beds are at full capacity. So I mean it's a serious thing. I mean you can't ignore it. It's certainly a problem here. It's significant. I don't know when it gets better. I'm not sure, but right now I would say that um, it's probably better being here than maybe in a larger city where there's more people around you. But we can't ignore the signs, and then the signs are pointing to right now it's pretty bad, um, and I don't know what that requires us to do. Clearly, if it means wear masks more often, it probably means going out less and limiting what we do. It might mean temporary shutdowns again, but I don't know if that's a realistic option in the country that we live in right now because a lot of people don't want that. So yeah, I don't. I guess I wish more people did what I did, but I can't tell people what to do with their lives and how to live their lives. That's on them. But you know, yeah.
Um, so just to clarify, so after Thanksgiving, for Thanksgiving break, all teaching at the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire is being moved online. Um, What is your opinion on this? Are you surprised or did you expect it?
I expected it, and I think it's the right decision. Um, I mean, I thought we'd go online earlier in the semester. I wasn't, as there was kind of the kind of this kind of casual kind of waging bets on when you think it would happen. And we initially had kind of a weird outbreak here in the beginning with the bookstore, and I thought they were going to shut us down. Then things got a little better, and then it picked up again, like the Halloween spike. Been pretty good here compared to maybe some other universities. I guess it's been okay, but I just expect with Thanksgiving, you can't possibly expect people just to remain in town and expect students in dorms to not leave and everything like that. I mean, people will travel, and you don't know what people are bringing back or what that's going to be like. And the fact that it's just 3 weeks and 2 weeks of instruction and 1 week of finals, I think we're at a point now where we basically had an in-person semester, however that looked like for most people. And I think it'll be fine and we'll get through it. I mean, it's last semester we had half a semester online. So 3 weeks isn't too bad. The real question is then, what will the spring semester look like? Because I have no idea. I think we intend to be in person, but I don't know what it will look like at that point, or how many cases we'll have. Um, so that's the bigger uncertainty right now.
Yeah, the basically it's looking to the future, like will cases go down or anything like that. In terms of like the actual university administration, do you think they've handled the pandemic well on campus?
Uh, Generally, yes. I mean, they're doing what they can. I mean, it's hard for me to say. I mean, I'm not in their shoes, and sometimes even if I'm not always agreeing with the decision they make, I know that they have to account for all sorts of factors that I'm not always thinking of. So I think of it from my perspective or my students' perspective. I think we clearly should shut down, but I don't know all the variables that are in play and what needs to be considered. And these are very important decisions that I'm very glad that I don't have to make myself. So generally, it's been fine. I think the communication has been there. I mean, I do appreciate the dashboard. I think overall it's been okay. Um, you're never going to make everyone happy in the situation. If we went completely online, some people would want to go elsewhere or would say, I'm paying too much for this. This is not right. If you go, completely in person, then you'll have some people say this is dangerous. You're putting people's lives at risk, right? This could be done online. If you do hybrid, which we kind of did, you make most people happy, but then there's a lot of confusion about how and this actually works. No one's ever dealt with this. I don't think there was like a handbook that you could hand out and say, oh wait, let's go find our COVID handbook that in case this happens. It happened so quickly. And so I think generally they've been doing fine with their decisions. Um, and you know,
Are you there?
so I don't know why it booted me out.
Oh, that's okay.
Hold on a second. Let me come back to this. 1 second.
All
Okay.
right. Yeah, we're back. Just a few technical difficulties. That's okay. It's to be expected.
I got a warning that said you'll be kicked off in 5 minutes. I don't know what that was, but I'm sorry. I
Uh,
don't know if it was on my end or your. I have no clue, but I'm back. Um, the last thing I was going to say about the administration was I think it'll take some time once this is all over to sort of reassess, exactly how decisions were made and what kind of decisions are made. But generally, I think the decisions are good. Um, there's a lot to factor in, and I think they've done a decent job. There's a lot of different sides to juggle in all of this, and so I don't have any strong views for or against it. I think it's been fine, and we'll see how we get through this, and whether they're the right decisions, I guess, in the future.
So we're going to shift again. So in terms of the government, um, what are your views on the actions that have been taken so far in terms of the pandemic by the state of Wisconsin and the federal government?
Uh, Pretty bad. Um, the federal government, I think, has completely botched this. If this is supposed to be an honest answer and then an honest archive, then it's this could have been done so many different ways, and in such a better manner. We should have been notified earlier about this. We know this because the president knows. He admitted to this and said, I didn't want to panic and worry people, but that is the time we needed to know. We should have moved faster on maybe like temporary shutdowns or lockdowns, or moved a lot faster on the masks. The message of the administration carries a lot of weight. So if the administration comes out and speaks to us honestly and with some compassion, and iterates how important masks are, that means a lot to how people behave and go about their business. So I think we could have handled it in a way where maybe in the summer or the fall we're going back to something a little bit more normal. But I think they were invested in it for a little bit. We had the kind of corona briefings, and then it was just dropped. And at the moment, if reporting is correct, the president hasn't attended a coronavirus briefing in months. um, he sort of has said this is going to go away. It's just a matter of time. None of that is true. We know this. It's serious. And it's weird because I know the incoming administration has a better plan, and I know I trust them more, but this weird transition period is scary for me because of the lack of communication, and the amount of, you know, they're really not working with each other because the current administration doesn't want to. And it's really bad right now, and this is where we need leadership. And I think to some degree, the governor in Wisconsin has been better about it, but he's sort of been constrained by the Supreme Court, and the and his I think his intentions have been good, but I think so much of it has to begin at the federal level and kind of be implemented down. Because if we can get a cohesive message at the federal level, then I think that's easier for governors than to implement that at the state level. And we just haven't had that at the federal level. And I think it's there's very little you can say to me that will convince me that this was handled correctly or responsibly by the administration. You just have to look at the amount of cases and the amount of deaths, and that in itself should be enough. And probably probably a good reason why we now have a new president elect. So um, again, this was one of those things where I think years from now, when we look back at it, we are going to be asking questions of exactly did this happen, and why did we make the decisions that we did. And people will be sort of baffled, and we'll be looking for answers. But yeah, that would, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think that says enough. Yeah.
So you teach international relations and global politics. What have you noticed on the international scale over the course of the pandemic, I suppose?
Well, I have noticed how in places like New Zealand and Taiwan, they've really controlled it. And I know these are smaller places and islands, and I get that. But when you consider, in Taiwan, they've had like less than 600 cases, and we have, I don't know what you said today, 300,000 in Wisconsin, over this time. That's just shocking. You look at how in Europe for some time they had it under control a little better, and life looked a little bit more normal for them, and now it's spiking up again. And so generally you see it's weird because the whole world is going through the same thing, and that's something that is very rare to see that's so immediate. Like there's nothing that can connect us in such a way that I can think of that it impacts everyone no matter where they live. So in a way that's pretty interesting to see. But it's also, when you look at our situation as the most dominant country in the world according to us in many ways. And you see the amount of cases that we have, and you compare that to other developed countries, you have to ask, why did we get it so wrong here? And that's the big kind of narrative that I take away from the when I look at internationally with other countries that are at the level of the United States, kind of our peers, as why have we done it, so much worse than them? Um, that's been my big notice, and just how great Taiwan has been at it. I mean, that's just I always bring that up in class.
Um, so what do you think the United States could have done differently in terms of the pandemic? I know you mentioned maybe increasing like the mask mandates earlier, or even making a federal mask mandate. But what do you think? What kind of changes do you think should have been done earlier?
Decisive steps should have been taken, and I think January, early February, prepare the American people for what was going to happen. Yes, that would have caused a little bit of uncertainty and fear and panic, but spoken to people honestly and let them know like this is a time to prepare. Life is going to look different in a little bit. That would have helped out because it was just kind of thrown in there in like mid March, and it happened to just to be honest with people. Don't tell people this is a 2 week. What was it? 2 weeks of lockdown, then we'll go back and everything will be fine by Easter. I mean, that kind of rhetoric is dangerous because it gives people false hope. So, been very honest. Mask mandate would have been important. Um, Maybe a longer, and I know this is difficult, but a longer lockdown on certain things would have probably helped. Opening up and again limiting. I mean, do we need to have fans at football games or stuff like that? Is that really necessary, right? Do we need to have these kinds of things? So that would have helped. More testing. Um, that Look, the research points to the fact that wearing masks and increase the amount of people wearing masks, if most of us wore masks, a lot less people would have died. So that in itself, I think, would have been a really good start. So if we implement one with the Biden administration, that's good, but that's also almost a year too late, in my opinion.
So you mentioned longer lockdowns, like businesses or like further restrictions. Um, so I suppose, how do you think the government should have handled like job loss or struggling businesses? Like they U.S. government, they passed the first stimulus check. Do you think the government should pass a second one or further ones after that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Makes sense. Um, the one stimulus check seems, I mean, people got about $1,200 individually or 2,400 per family, which in a lot of cases doesn't cover expenses. It might cover somebody's rent or some things here for a month, but when people are out of work and they're filing for unemployment, and businesses need help. I think it makes sense. You think about the stimulus checks that have been handing out in Canada and how those have been continuous and how they've helped people. I think under these circumstances, it would have been the right thing to do. Politically speaking, I think it would have probably helped the president's reelection campaign had he done that. I mean, I think that would have probably helped in his favor because of the other decisions that he's made around this have been pretty poor. But I think it would have made a lot more sense to do that. There's been a lot of bickering and infighting between Congress. They sort of just gave up on many of the stimulus talks. I blame both sides for that. I think it's just not wanting to sort of, you know, hear out the other side. A lot of politicking when people's lives are at stake, and unfortunately, it led to this. And you know, uh, yeah. So definitely should have done more. Maybe they will in moving forward, but what was done in this short period of time, it just isn't enough. The response that you have to sort of just tackle this and live with it and not be afraid of it isn't necessarily the way that we're going to get through this, because I'm not okay with more people dying. That should never be like the trade-off. So yeah.
Um, what have your primary sources of information been during the pandemic, such as news or other?
Well, you know, news will come from all sorts of places, whether it's the Times, the Post. I'll see news on I'll see news on TV, CBS, ABC, NBC. I'll see CNN. I'll see all of them. Um, Normally, I have been looking to, if to experts who, like a Fauci or like anyone that you know who can speak to this. If someone mentions research related to this, I want to find that primary source. I want to see where that comes from. So generally, I kind of take my news broadly, and I already know. I know like what's crap and what should be listened to. I can decipher that. That isn't a problem for me, but I do trust more expert opinions, regardless of what the source is, because that's who we should be listening to right now. We should be listening to scientists. It's so clear. It's so evident. I don't not I don't want to hear from people who have anecdotal stories on social media about something, or how they earn their MD on Facebook and how they're going to tell me everything's in. Like, I don't need to know. I don't need to listen to that. This is serious enough, and there's people who are experts on this, and what they're saying is that this is a really dark time and that we need to take it seriously. But they've been saying that for 9 months. And I think the country's basically like 50-50 on those that are taking it seriously and those that are sort of saying, what can I do? Got to live my life and, go about my life. So, yeah.
So kind of a follow-up question about the experts. What do you think of the people that like denounce the experts or prefer what they term alternative facts?
Well, there's no such thing as alternative facts, but I this isn't this isn't just something that we've seen related to coronavirus. This is something like the truth decay, right? That we've seen get like progressively worse in the last couple of years, of people spreading all sorts of messed up conspiracy theories about things that are just cannot be true, and how we've legitimized just in the past. We're like growing up as like being in middle school, high school, and someone brings a conspiracy theory. It's something you kind of laugh at, you entertain it for a little bit, then you kind of move on with your life. It's not, you don't never take it too seriously. And people bring up JFK, UFOs, moon landing, Tupac Shakur being still alive, like things like that. But like, you just kind of move on after that. It's not like a serious thing. But to have conspiracy spread to the point where people legitimately believe them is frustrating. I guess it's a lot easier for people to be ignorant and to believe what they want because the truth hurts. But what can you do about it? The truth is the truth. It's sad. It doesn't help that, again, when the most powerful person in the country is spreading this on their own Twitter account, like the president, it doesn't help because his voice means a lot, and he could easily shut a lot of this down if he just didn't say the things that he did. So it's funny to me because I think about it, like I think of like the simple thing that I think of is like if your arm started hurting, or you had like something was wrong and you needed to go to the doctor, and you walked in, you're like, I really need to go to the doctor, like something doesn't feel right, I feel sick, I feel hurt. And you walked into the doctor's office, the doctor came to you and said, look, I'm not really a doctor, I just kind of, but I have a different way of approaching this, like I've thought about it differently, and why don't you let me take a crack at that shoulder. I don't think most of us would be like, sure. We always look for experts when it comes to certain things. Like your car breaks down, you want someone who knows something about cars to fix it. You need a haircut, you go to someone who knows how to cut hair. You want an international relations course, you take a course with someone who teaches international relations. You get sick, something's wrong with your teeth, you go to a dentist. We always look for the person that knows what they're doing. We live our lives this way. You need a lawyer, you look for a lawyer, right? But for some reason, when this comes around, everybody sort of becomes this expert, and they think they know more, and they start ridiculing these people who have been doing this their entire lives, who have just committed themselves to the facts and to the science, and have been calling them, frauds and whatever it may be. And that's just sad, because that's not how most people live their lives. Because if you look at most of those people's lives, and when they have a problem, they would normally seek out advice from people that can help them, who are experts in that. But somehow they've all become experts on COVID, and that's interesting, I guess.
Um, so I'm sure you've heard about this, but um, as of today, there are now three supposed vaccines in the process. One is 95% effective. The one in Russia is 92% effective, and I believe a third one is 90% effective. Do you think that this will bring like hope for like the future, like such as like next semester, or just at the end of the year, like early next year, 2021?
Yeah, I think the likelier timeline is end of next year. I don't know how the distribution will go, and well, we're not at that phase yet. But if we get to that, that's promising. You know, how it gets distributed, I assume it goes to maybe doctors or nurses or frontline people, maybe older populations, whatever it may be. Um, I know that some people will have to wait a while. I think next year will look similar to this year. We have to be cautiously optimistic that life can be better. Maybe the fall semester looks a little different, but generally, I would think that if the vaccines are effective and they are distributed, then 2022 should bring us back to more normal life. So yeah, I would think for next year the likelier timeline would be towards the end of the year. But we'll see. I have no idea how this distribution phase will work, and how we're going to get the vaccine, and how long we have to wait for it. But it's hopeful news. It's good.
Do you think the media has done a good job of covering the pandemic? What is your view on the public health crisis, and how should it be handled by the press?
Mm, I mean, I I guess. You mean they're certainly reporting on it, and like if you turn on like an MSNBC or a CNN, or sometimes like they have like a little tracker there that tells you the amount of cases, and I mean that's good. That's obviously lets people know, hey, this is serious, and look what's happening. I think generally they have reported on it fine. I think the problem is not so much how the reporting is done, is the kind of pushback from certain segments of the population who don't want to listen or trust the media in any case, or who have sort of dismissed this as the problem that it is the problem, or have sort of said, who kind of moved on and don't want to hear any of that. And so you're really talking to like two different worlds sometimes. You're talking to a world that understands this and is looking to do the things that they can individually to get us through this, and you're talking to another world that doesn't care for that and is going to go about their lives as they please, and has really nothing to do with how the media covers. I mean, the media can come out tomorrow and say 200,000 people have died today. It's likely that they could get to that number. It wouldn't change anyone's thinking who already has dismissed this in April or May or June. Um, and I don't know if there's anything that the media could change to get those people to listen, right? I think it's not necessarily a media problem alone. Yeah.
Okay. Final question. Um, what are some of the important things that you have learned, either about yourself or just in general, or that have you seen over the course of the pandemic?
I've learned that, people are probably more resilient than they thought they were, that people are able to adapt and adjust, and there are a lot of very compassionate people, and that's good. I've also learned that some people are the opposite of that, and are, more selfish, more ignorant, sort of don't want to hear the truth. It seems like times that the actions taken by myself or people who are taking this seriously, they seem overbearing, because it seems like you're doing this for the greater good, even though others are doing things that are the opposite of that. And so it's like you're fighting a lost battle, because for every good action that's taken, there's kind of a worse action. But I mean, yeah, I mean, generally, I think it's made a lot of people thankful for the things that they have, and it's made people realize how insignificant some first world problems that are, and how we should complain less about those. I think should make people, you know, if you have to look at the death count and just say to yourself, it's a lot of people that have died, and to not get sick and to not to not die is something that you should be, you should appreciate that every day, and to still have your family around and things like that. So I think I hope it's a good learning experience for people. I hope it's something that we remember moving into the future, because um, it significantly changed life. But it's sometimes just frustrating, and it's sad when you see kind of the opposite of it. You see people pushing back on it, and you see someone say, "Well, you test more, or people are going to get sick no matter what. So what's the big deal?" I don't know. That's hard to overcome. So you've seen good and bad during this, and it's kind of it's given you an insight to how people are, which is it's good to know moving forward, to kind of remember who are the people that you know you know adhere to the facts, and were compassionate during this time, and the people that sort of blew this off and went the other direction. So yeah, I don't know. That's probably all I got for that one at the time.
Okay, well, I have no further questions, so thank you for your time. I will end the interview.